Hey, what's up, universe? So there's a lot going on. First, this wasn't what I anticipated to be my first video on a new phone. So I'm going to celebrate that I have a new phone. So thank you, universe, for that. This is going to be a semi-long one because I feel like there's some context that I would like to provide. And not necessarily a lot of people are watching these videos, but there are people that are. And, I've been contacted, and I've certainly been blessed and gifted too. And so there's a few things that are kind of big puzzle pieces right now in my life. One is the home, one is my job, one is my finances. It's pretty much it right now. Those are the three big puzzle pieces. So, I've spoken about some of these. And I'm deciding whether or not, what information to share, and I'm just going to lean into the unknown. I'm going to do things I wouldn't normally do. I'm going to speak about things I wouldn't normally speak about because this whole exercise is about vulnerability for me. So let's do it. Let's start with the house. Oh, and if you happen to notice, this is I record myself every day, right? So since I've got a new phone, I'm recording myself on my old phone. These are my audio journals. This is the microphone I use, in case you're wondering what that is. So, the house. The house that I'm moving into, and notice the language that I'm moving into, is a stretch for me. And I haven't spoken to dollar amounts. I haven't really given any reason as to why this is kind of a stretch. So let's go ahead and get into that. This house is still in Kansas City and sits on 47 acres of land. It's a beautiful house. It actually represents a house that I visualized as a child, being my ideal house, where it's if I had X amount of money, and back when I was younger, it was $250,000. The value of this house would be much more than that now. But anyway, so I was just thinking the type of porch, the type of doors, the type of fence and perimeter of the property. This house that I'm moving into here in Kansas City very much represents that visualization that I had when I was younger. And then not only does it sit on this land, the rent for this is $5,500 a month, plus utilities and all of this. And now I know when I say that, how that might land for some people. Now, part of the reason this video could be long is I need to get into the context around these things, because my relationship with these things is not typical. It's not standard, in the sense that those are numbers. It's a 5 and a 5, a 0 and a 0. Most, rationally speaking, would it make sense to be scared of a number? Why would I allow a number to inspire a vibration, an emotion inside of me that disturbs me, that knocks me off my center and keeps me from being grounded? Sorry, man. I'm not buying into that. I'm not doing that. That's just not how I roll, right? So I have definitely practiced and trained myself and continue to train myself to have a different relationship to numbers and dollar amounts, and very aware on what type of feeling that inspires in me. So I have a much different relationship to money because of this type of mindset. So that needs to be clear as we go through things. So it's $5,500 a month plus, utilities. Okay. When I went to go see this house with my two sons, I had just paid my ex-wife the amount of money that we've agreed upon every month, which is a decent amount of change. I had maybe $100 in my account when I went to go see this house. And I checked in with myself around how I felt when me and my boys went to go see this house. And man, I was cheesing the entire time. You're like smiling. I was like, we all loved it, right? There wasn't a hint of fear. There wasn't any of that, because I can handle that house. Like, I can handle this payment. Like, I got it. You know what I mean? So the security deposit is $2,500 and then 1 month's rent. That's the standard one. That's what they stipulate from the beginning. Now, there's an application process, right? I mentioned this. Okay. So I go through the application process. The application was denied because of previous choices that I had made. My credit is not in the best shape. Again, like, because I believe in the power of belief, like Bruce Lipton, Dr. Joe Dispenza, like, this stuff is real, like the power of the mind, and why I am so keen on my vibration and my centeredness and me being grounded. The words that I use, the vibration that I'm putting out is so important. And what I believe is so important. And so I knew what my credit was. And at the same time, I know I can handle this house. So when Jason came back, the man I've been speaking with, the guy at the house, and he's like, I can get you approved. Like, I was like, boom, like, we can do this. Like, this is moving forward. And I still believe that. It's just a puzzle piece right now. So Jason's like, to make this happen, we're going to need $2,500 deposit and 2 months rent. So I was like, you're asking for $13,500. And he's like, yeah. I was like, all right. And again, when I was given this information, I had $100 in my bank account. So I tell you this information not to, like, this is not an ego thing. This is to impress upon you if it inspires a feeling inside of you to hear these numbers, I'm no different than you. Okay, I'm not. I'm just practicing a different way of relating. That's it. It's the only reason I'm putting these videos out here it's not an ego thing. It's like, here's what I'm doing and here's how I'm practicing. It's like I'm going to the gym and here's my workout. That's basically all it is. Like, this is, that's all these videos are. This is my process. So $13,500. I've got $100 in my bank account at the time. And I'm like, okay. And I'm checking in with myself and I'm managing myself, right? Okay. All right, well, I can do this. How? Look, man, that's not my problem. That's not my problem exactly. Not entirely the how. The relationship to my fear and centering myself and being grounded and how am I relating to that? That's how am I managing myself? That's my work. Because then whatever is meant for me will arrive to me. So when I became calm and centered, like, I was able to realize, oh, actually, I have some assets that I can liquidate, and I have the security deposit. And the security deposit, the $2,500, that was the first hurdle to clear. So I had to remind myself, one step at a time. One step at a time. Not the whole thing. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. You don't eat the whole elephant all at once. One bite at a time. Okay. So I liquidated some assets, generated the $2,500. Boom, there you go. So I had the house secured. Now, the remainder of like the other $11,000 still needed to be accounted for. Okay. Well, I got paid, which is a decent amount, so I got my 2-week installment of my payment. So that takes care of, 1 month rent and then some. So I was like, all right, cool. And then one of the men that I met in Costa Rica, and this is an interesting reciprocity. There's a man in Costa Rica that I gifted money to, and then now I'm being loaned money, and it's this beautiful dance of reciprocity, and I'm in love with it, and I'm grateful for these men, and I'm grateful for all of my connections. This whole story is fascinating. So it's really, just, it's a story. It's an unfolding of my life, and I'm sharing it. So I was loaned some money, which now puts me at like having most of that $11,000 that needed to be conjured up. It's pretty fucking cool. And I will say that there's about, I don't know, $3,000 to $4,000 gap remaining. So these are the numbers. So then yesterday evening, I received a message from Jason, and we were talking about everything that I just told you in a way. We were talking about the numbers, how much was going to be, the gap, this kind of a thing. And obviously they're not going to provide me the lease until I fulfill the obligation. So, meaning tomorrow I'm not moving. I told Jason I would need about another week or so to organize the remainder of the money. Now, I don't know how, whatever. I don't know how that, whatever. I don't care about that. What I care about is how I am, what my internal state is. Huge. So then that's the puzzle piece right now. That's the puzzle piece with the house. That's where we're at. Now, on the flip side, what am I going to do here? Like this place, right? Well, my current landlord has written me and asked me about how the move is going and when I may be out tomorrow and this kind of a thing. And so I have yet to respond to them because I still haven't decided how I feel about that, this internal state around responding and what exactly my next move is. In that context, I'm not for sure. And so I need to take some time and be present with that, and I'm going to do that after I do this video. So that's one big puzzle piece. I'm watching my language more. So that's one giant puzzle piece. The next big puzzle piece is around work. Now, from the very beginning of this contract that I have, in fact, let me just back up a little bit. I initially declined this contract that I currently have because it didn't feel right. And I honor that. I straight up honor that. And so the recruiter is aware from the very beginning why, she's aware of my initial response, where I was coming from, how I handle energy, how I base my choices, if things feel right, if they don't, that kind of thing. On the flip side, at the actual location that I'm doing the work for, my supervisor is also aware of this fact about me. And I've had some conversations recently within the last few months around how I've been feeling out at work. So I initially declined the contract because it didn't feel right. There was something political. There was something that just energetically didn't feel aligned with me. And I had to sit with that. In this job, I've never been recruited so hard in my life. And so eventually I allowed myself to go ahead and take the job. And that kind of hum ran in the background, something about I'm not entirely sure what this is. Starting at the beginning of the year, when everything was changing for me, this part of my life, my professional part of my life, definitely became another focal point. And I spoke about it in these audio journals, right? I knew that I was speaking about how I felt about work and what my relationship was to work. And so I was speaking my truth, but I was willfully ignoring it. And I've written journals before too. When I was going through my divorce at the beginning of the year, I went through some of my old journals and I picked out 3 of them on 3 separate occasions and read my truth. And yet I had willfully ignored it. And so I have data of myself speaking and something inside of me trying to say, hey man, this is what's real for you. And this is what's up. And then me just being yeah. Going with the devil I know, because it's a lot more comfortable and I don't have to do any work with that. The work I have to do is just tolerating tolerating the situation that I'm irritated with, but I'm used to that, right? Like I don't have to change anything. I'm used to being irritated with this situation. So, anyway, what I'm trying to get at is that like this all plays hugely into my philosophy and my own ethos and my beliefs and my practices. So for the last 5 months, I have been willfully ignoring my truth. And it's been awful, honestly. It's been awful. And so as I spoke about in my last video a few days ago, there was an incident that came up for me and that really put this to point, like really punctuated it. Well, yesterday evening, I just couldn't ignore it anymore. So after work, after, the end of the day, I wrote my recruiter and I told her I'm terminating this contract. I'm terminating the contract with the place that I'm working with and with the contracting company. And again, I had conversations with my recruiter, both at the very, very beginning and then also within the last month or two. I've had a conversation or two with some people actually at the place of my employment that this still probably will come as a surprise, I'm sure. And yet, I can say that I've had some conversations that when reflected upon will be like, well, I mean, we could see it coming, you know what I mean? So there's that, right? So I have these financial obligations. I have this house that has uncertainty around it. And now I've terminated willfully and of my own free will and accord this contract. And now here I am. Now there's another piece. There's a third piece because I said there was 3 puzzle pieces. Part of what I'm going through is around evaluating what is real for me and what my values are. And so when I think about the house, this morning I thought about what does the house represent to me? What feelings does it represent? What is important to me about that house? Now, this house, again, being on a lot of land and just there's a lot of energy that is just the words community and connection come up. And for those of you that know me, especially like my ex-wife, how I have felt about my house is very private. It's very much a sanctuary. Like I wasn't really keen on people coming into my space. You know what I mean? Now, when I feel into this house and I feel into what feels good to me, the words community and connection come up because at that location, at that house, like definitely meant for hosting, like definitely meant for contributing and engendering and creating more connection, deeper connection, and a sense of community, and I love it. Like it feels good. And that's so different from anything I've ever felt around my house before. And I'm like, that feels really good. And that's amazing. I even have entertained throwing a housewarming party, which I have never, ever done. I've never done that. So what I'm getting at here, the reason I bring that up is that with this theme in mind, understanding that community and connection are the real values that are coming through, I got this thinking about this led me to Zendesk, which I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with Zendesk. You may or may not be, but it is a software. Actually, it's a platform for a lot of different things. You can use it for sales. A lot of companies use it for support, supporting their products. It's what their agents use on the internal side to provide support to the customers. It's a ticketing system, but there's a lot more to it. But anyway, I am a group leader. Zendesk, the company, back last November started a community type of program where they create user groups, like where there's like users of Zendesk, and they go to these virtual meetings that are all ran by volunteers, right? And we just go through stuff that might be interesting to other Zendesk users or administrators. Like just tips and tricks, like different applications, like problem solving, because, it's just collaboration, right? Well, I'm a developer, and I wanted a developer group. So I offered to be the leader of the developer group. So I went through an application process with that and interviewed and got elected to do that. So I've been doing that for a little bit. I've had 2 meetings now. My second one was yesterday. The reason I mention all of this is because as I feel into these values, and I was being called to make a choice to end something, and at the same time move in the direction of something else, because I've ended things before and then just sat there. I knew it had to end, but I don't know what else to do. I've totally been there, and then I sat for way too long. So what's coming up for me now is okay, end this and move at the same time. Stop something and create something else at the same time. And I'm like, oh, okay. So as I feel into these values of community and connection, I find it interesting that Zendesk and me being the group leader is something that's already there. Furthermore, and more to the point about this third puzzle piece, is that Zendesk, for the first time in a couple of years because of COVID, is having an in-person event in San Francisco on May 10th. Now, when I first learned of this, I was like, I definitely want to go. It's primarily a virtual event, but they do have an in-person part of this event that you have to apply to get, into, and then, there's only a limited number of seats, right? And so I was like, well, that's what I want to go to, because I want to meet people face to face, personal connections, So because I'm a group leader for this community stuff for the developers, I happen to have access to some internal people at Zendesk. And so I'm talking to one of these individuals, and I'm like, hey, I would like to go. I know that I have to apply. You guys are primarily targeting senior executives, decision makers, all this kind of thing. And the response I got was hey, we would love to have you come out, and I can get your application approved. Okay, that's awesome. Now, I had mentioned this to the place that I was contracted for, and I'm like, hey, I'd like to go to this event. You guys cool with that? And they're like, you can go. We're not going to pay for it, and you can't go under you can't say, not under our identity, right? The contracting company. You could say that you're with them, and they could pay for it, that kind of thing. I was like, all right. So the contracting company was actually looking into this for me, to pay for me to go out there and all of this kind of thing. There wasn't a final decision yet before I made my choice, where I'm like, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to end this contract. So what I'm getting at is that last night, after I ended the contract, I sat and I was feeling into this and leaning into this, and I'm like, I'm going to this thing because there's something here for me. I can feel this. And all of this other stuff that I just told you about, right? It's in my brain. I'm like, all of these things are still in my brain, and I'm still managing it. And at the same time, I'm feeling the values, what's real for me. Community, connection, Zendesk, and this in-person event. And you know what's funny about this in-person event with Zendesk? Do you know what it's called? It's called Relate. Zendesk Relate 2023. The event itself has always been called Relate. And if anybody knows me, and if you've listened or watched any of my previous videos, relate is a big word for me. And so I just think it's hilarious that the event name is Relate. So I'm going to go to this event. I've already been invited to go out to dinner, with some of the people from Zendesk. They were talking about that before I even booked anything. They were like, oh yeah, you should totally come out. We'll get your application approved. We'll take you out to dinner. Sweet. Okay. So that's where I'm at right now. I went ahead and spent about $1,100 on a hotel and a flight, and I'm going to go out there, and I'm letting this all unfold. And again, I'm giving you these numbers not to impress upon you anything about finances. It has nothing to do with my ego. It has everything to do to illustrate that, like, my brain is not too different from yours, okay? These numbers can and do inspire emotions and feelings like they may be for you, anxieties, fears, uncertainties, all of that fun, juicy stuff, okay? Like, I get it. The whole point of this is to illustrate that I believe that how we navigate these kinds of things in our lives, how we choose to show up, how we choose to relate to these things, is directly proportional, directly related to the quality of life that we experience. I believe that as we manage our state and our vibration, as we maneuver and navigate things that appear to be extremely messy. Right now, I've got some big ass puzzle pieces on my table, and I'm not sure how they're going to fit together. It looks pretty messy. Yet, at the same time, it's a puzzle. It's a puzzle. How am I relating to this? I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to figure it out with my angels and my watches, my guides, the archangels, the ascended masters, the universe. The universe is my ultimate partner, my ultimate feminine partner. Dude, we got this. We got this, man. It's not about how it looks. It's about how I arrive there and just appreciating and loving the journey. This, I believe, is what is meant by falling in love with the process. Allowing the process to be messy. Allowing it to be what it is. Let it look however it needs to look. Let it be whatever it needs to be. And don't get hung up on that, man. Because, where are you at on the inside? How am I feeling on the inside? How am I weathering this storm? That's all I care about, man. I'm going to get through the storm. It's just how am I being and how is it feeling as I go through it? That's I don't want to suffer any more than I have to, man. So if I can relate to that storm in a way that centers me and grounds me, hell yeah, I'm going for that. All right, thanks for watching. This was a long one. Appreciate you sticking around. I love you guys. Bye.